Welcome to the November edition of the Tempo Storm Shadowverse Meta Snapshot. The Celestial Dragonblade meta has once again been shaken up by a sweeping balance patch, the biggest consequence of which has been the unseating of the meta's previous undisputed king, Artifact Portal. This patch saw a nerf to Genesis Artifact, which greatly harmed Artifact Portal's ability to close out games, leaving it no longer viable. Puppet Portal has taken its place as the go-to portal archetype, meaning that Fairy Forest, which struggles heavily against the former, has seen a decline. Meanwhile, other previous Tier 2 decks, such as Spellboost Rune and Crystallize Haven, have risen to the top of the meta now that Artifact no longer bars the way. With the most powerful OTK deck gone, a number of control decks, notably Haven and Sword, are also finding success. Without a doubt, though, the new star of the show is Quickblader Sword, which was seeing a steady increase in popularity just before the patch, but has now truly taken off and cemented itself as the strongest deck around. The aggressive archetype's only common unfavorable matchup is Handless Blood, making it a very safe pick. Let's take a look at some of the key decks emerging in this post-artifact meta. The best and most consistent archetype in the meta now, Quickblader Sword, is an aggressive deck that aims to flood the board early in order to build up rally and chip the opponents down, then finish them off with a buffed and evolved Swift Speed Quickblader. The key to much of the deck's damage potential is reaching Rally 10, which can be achieved as early as turn 5. Something that makes it particularly unique is its resilience against control decks, as opposed to most aggro decks which struggle against control, because it also packs a pretty consistent OTK as a backup plan. With Artifact out of the way, it's in prime position to prey on combo and control decks alike, with very few bad matchups to speak of. For a full overview on how to build and play the deck, check out Essia's guide to Quickblader Sword here on our website. Puppet has once again become the Portal player's weapon of choice. A flexible deck with a wide variety of tech options, Puppet can play very aggressively while threatening huge burst with Orcus, the Limitless, and New Destruction, but also has room to swap in slower cards for a better chance of winning out against control decks. Absolute Chastity is somewhat less consistent since being nerfed, but is still played for the sheer power of the swing turns she can create. The nerf to Summon Divine Treasure certainly made it less appealing, but Puppet has no shortage of viable card choices to fill that void. The deck can be molded to target whatever you need it to, which is perhaps its greatest strength. One of several control decks finding favor now that the strongest OTK deck has been removed from the meta, the most common variant of Control Haven centers around using Bellafron and various healing effects to continually answer the opponent's threats and stay out of their lethal range until it can end the game with its own finisher, whether that be Holy Saber, Gilnelis, Uranus, or Ultimate Bahamut. However, some lists have chosen to forego Bellerophon and the heal engine entirely, opting instead for cards that give the deck more stalling power and board lock potential. Combo decks like Spellboost, Quickblader, and Crystallize will give either version a lot of trouble, but Control Haven remains an ideal choice for countering decks that rely on building up a board. While early lists utilizing a pure Ghost build proved inconsistent, this hybrid deck combining Ghost and Last Word engines has done quite well since it arose as an answer to Artifact. The goal is to control the board while building up Last Words to proc the effects of cards like Cerberus, Infernal Hound and Minnow, Daydreaming Reaper, then play Masquerade Ghost into Skeleton Raider to close out the game. It boasts favorable matchups against both Spellboost Rune and Puppet Portal, but struggles against both control decks which can answer the boards it creates quite easily, as well as aggro decks which can race Shadow and take advantage of its lack of healing. Whether the deck still has a place in the meta without Artifact remains to be seen. Handless Blood remains as strong as ever, though it is highly susceptible to changes in the meta. Its game plan has not changed since Roar of the Godworm. The deck aims to play extremely aggressively and to empty its hand as soon as possible in order to invoke Paracelise, Demon of Greed. The nerf to Bat Usher ironically made the deck's early decision-making easier, as playing it on turn 1 is no longer a consideration. Handless does well against Quickblader Sword, the meta's new biggest threat threat, but struggles against control decks, which are also picking up in popularity. Time will tell which of these factors influences Handless's presence more. While the fall of Artifact Portal has cracked the meta open somewhat and allowed for more than a single top-tier archetype to exist, one still stands out above all the rest for laddering: Quickblader Sword. Its aggressive game plan lends itself to fast games, and among all the most common decks on the ladder, it has only a single unfavorable matchup. What's more, the deck is relatively simple to pick up, with a gentle learning curve. That said, should Quickblader become common on ladder, Handless Blood could be a good counter pick to climb with, especially as it's also a fast deck while being much cheaper to make, but one must keep in mind that its overall matchup spread isn't nearly as positive. And finding success with it may rely on seeing its favorable matchups rather often. On the other hand, if Quickblader Sword does not become ubiquitous on ladder, Spellboost Rune remains a very powerful all-arounder for those who enjoy its style of play. The second balance patch of Celestial Dragonblade has had an undeniably high impact on the meta, but players are divided as to whether this is for the right reasons. It was largely expected that Artifact Portal would be nerfed in some way, but in choosing to strip such a huge amount of damage from its finisher with the Genesis artifact change, Cygames removed the deck from the meta entirely rather than just weakening it. In contrast, the various card buffs have had a negligible effect on their respective decks. Essentially, those decks that now reside at the top of the meta are largely there by virtue of Artifact being absent, not because they are stronger, and all of their previous issues and inconsistencies remain. Still, we were due for a change, and it will undoubtedly be interesting to see how the meta continues to develop in the aftermath of Artifact's fall. Puppet, the would-be replacement for Portal players, has shown a lot of variety in its card choices and still has room to stabilize. We predict it may end up adopting a slower game plan in order to better deal with the control decks gaining traction in the meta. Decks such as Hybrid Shadow and Fairy Forest, which targeted Artifact and struggle against control, may see a decline in popularity going forward. Handless Blood, in turn, may begin to see more play as an answer to the new top deck, Quickblader Sword. With luck, the coming mini expansion will introduce further support for new archetypes like Chess Rune, Crystallize Haven, and Ghost Shadow to boost their consistency. The Shadowverse Flame anime has already introduced several cards that would prove helpful to these decks were they to make it into the game. In the meantime, be sure to check out the Shadowverse section of our website regularly for guides on post-patch decks and a card reveal later this month. See you all in next month's edition of the Tempo Storm Shadowverse Meta Snapshot.